We have two focuses. One is the development work or the development model, and our slogan for our development work is making primary healthcare work. And I'm just going to go slowly or no quickly through some of these key points, and some of them we will come back and discuss in more detail. So key points in the development model is the sustainability, it's partnerships, quality of care is important, community participation is a big one, the strong financial management, and strengthening at the grassroots level. And of course, we are looking to reduce dependency. Our other focus is the humanitarian approach, which is, we can say, relief work or responding to emergencies. And here, everybody in AMERT, we go the extra length to save lives. Actually, every single day we find a situation where we very directly save lives. So when we get started on development projects, so what are some of the things that we have to put in order? In every country, if you want to start something like that, you need to have a legal registration as an NGO or whatever the situation is in your country. You have to have plans and arrangements for the funding of your work. You have to assemble a team. This is very key. No one can do this thing alone. Even if a person starts the thing alone, you won't get anywhere without having a team. And then the nature of what you can do will very much depend on the strengths of your team. Otherwise, you cannot undertake much. It is good to work to create partnerships. That means to work with other organizations, other structures, other players or stakeholders. And you have to resolve the right balance between your humble beginnings, what is realistic, what is practical when you start off a project. But at the same time, it's good to have a long-term vision, how you can grow. Now, practically, in my experience in Burkina Faso, in Ghana, and specifically here in Nigeria, a very, very key thing, fundamental thing is the selection of the project area where you will work. And you have to assess each of the communities. It is good to have alternatives. That means that when you start a project, you shouldn't just decide in advance that I'm going to work here or there. It's good to look at several places to see that to study them before you make the decision. And it is nice if you are invited. That means if you have someone who invites you, someone from the community who invites you to that particular area. And then to make sure, one of the key points in ensuring success is that you have to confirm what we call the felt need of the community. One thing is that communities will say that we need this or we need that. Or you may have a clear idea that this is what we want to do for you, or this is what we can do for you. But you have to see whether the population across the board deeply feel the need. If they don't feel the need, then you shouldn't waste your time trying to do something in that area. The community must be in your flow along with you and agree on the priorities. Now, it is necessary to get the approval of government. And sometimes, like in Burkina Faso, when AMERT started in Burkina Faso in the late 80s, the AMERT team landed and they went straight to the government, and the government asked them to go to the most remote and neglected corner of Burkina Faso. And that's how AMERT Burkina Faso ended up in Deo in Udalan province. So there must be an understanding so that you are well coordinated with the authorities. And partnership opportunities plays in here. Now, when you start a project, it is necessary to define your target population, and know the size of the population to see if it's realistic that you can handle that size of population, and also the geographical area. So that is, if you're going to invest your time and financial resources, all your energy, you would want to make it worthwhile. So you must have a population in mind. Like, let's say if you have a choice of different places, you may want to try to go to the place where you can reach more people or help greater number of people. And another thing of selection of project area is, what structures, like for example, are there buildings, are there other structures available that can help you with these projects? And look at also the human resources available particular to that area. And then, of course, the local community leadership, which is perhaps the key factor. We'll come back to that later. So particularly in primary healthcare, what are the primary healthcare needs? How do you find that out? Sometimes you can look at government statistics, and but in rural Africa, very often you cannot get good government statistics. So you will have to visit the area, and you can get some of the basic information through meetings, village meetings, stakeholder meetings in the community. And if you feel that one place is a real good choice, then if you're seriously thinking to consider one place, then you may want to do a baseline survey, so you know where you're starting, your starting point. You know your baseline. So what are some of the key things that you want to find out? What is the distance to the closest functioning health center or hospital? And what is the maternal mortality rate and the child and newborn mortality rate? Sometimes when we go and do these community assessments, we can get a lot of stories and reports of maternal deaths. We will get names, and we will visit and we'll confirm them right away. If we get many of that in certain communities or certain villages, then we know that we can confirm in the most direct way that here there is an urgent need for the services. A key thing in maternal health is facility delivery. That means hospital delivery versus home delivery. In the West, particularly in holistic health and alternative circles, natural childbirth, we advocate home delivery. But in an area where you have high maternal mortality rate, our strategy will be to try to get the women to give birth in the health centers. So it's good to get an idea where you go in, what's the rate. Antenatal care attendants, where do the women go for checkup during pregnancy? Family planning. Is there awareness? There are places in Africa where I have experienced it myself, where the families have no idea. They don't even hear about it. They don't know anything about family planning. And then there are other special local issues. So here I want to, at this point, I want to share some quotes of the founder of AMERC, Baba, or P.R. Sarkar, because how we identify the leadership and the importance of leadership is very crucial. So the solidarity and unity of a group depends on the strength and determination of the leadership. If the leadership is not strong, the entire structure, social, economic, political, becomes weak and ultimately crumbles down. So we must pay attention in our decision making to the leadership. People follow leaders, good or bad. The nature of human beings is somewhat like that of sheep. When one sheep follows into a ditch, the others will follow. That means if you try to work in the communities, if you have good local leaderships, good community leadership, then people will follow along, and there's a great chance of success. If you don't have that, it's like an uphill battle. It's going to be very difficult. And of course, we want to start projects where we think we can succeed. So to develop any area economically, planning must start at the grassroots level. The direction of economic development should be from the bottom to the top, not from the top to the bottom. The latter approach is impractical and a utopian myth. In Africa, you see a lot of international NGOs coming with sort of ready-made models from London, from New York, from Geneva, and say that this is how we work. It is a fact that every country, or even within the country, different areas have their own unique characteristics. And when you make your plan, you've got to really involve the local people and try to understand what is going on the ground at the grassroots. So who makes the plan? Economic plans and the program should never be imposed from the top. On the contrary, there must be adequate scope for them to emerge from the grassroots. Each and every economic plan should be prepared in the concerned local area. So that's why we feel proud about our primary healthcare model, because it's developed on the ground in Nigeria, in the villages in Nigeria. Yeah, I think we have said no, I skipped this slide for want of time. It says basically the same thing. So when we try to assess the local communities, it's necessary to understand the local leadership structures. In Africa, you will find that there are different leadership structures that dominate or that are really influential or in control in different areas. So we need, before we make our moves to start, or even after we start, we have to really struggle to understand the local leadership structure. Is it the government structure? Is it the village heads? Is it the development union? Is it maybe religious structures? Is it private or individuals who assume leadership? In many parts of Africa, there are traditional leaders, who carry forward local traditions that have been there for centuries or longer. So we need to create a relationship with them before we start moving very far, so that we can have their support. Again, if we work on invitations, or if we receive applications from community, that's good, because if a community is organized enough to send an application or invite an organization, that means that they have recognized their needs and they have some leadership and they have some initiative. So it's much better than to go and knocking on doors and say, do you need help, or can we do this for you? Resident leadership is important, because in Africa, in the places I have worked, you see that people who make it financially or make it professionally, they have ties to their villages. Maybe they have a house in the village, or they are much respected in the village. They might even support financially the village. But for your project, you want to have leadership that resides in the village. You don't want to count on people who live in town, who live in the big cities, as your contact for the village. Now, demonstration of commitment is a very important thing. That means that if you start something, you will ask the community, what can they invest? What will they contribute? So in our case, when we work with primary healthcare, in some places we have gone, actually all the places in the beginning, there was no hospital building. And in every case, we got the community to commit the land and all the labor in the construction. And in many cases, depending on what's available locally, they contributed sand or gravel or even wood to the construction. So when communities demonstrate a commitment, then they also develop a sense of ownership. And it sort of solidifies or their commitment. There's a lot of clan disputes and tribal disputes and all kinds of what we call village politics going on, throughout rural Africa. It's good to understand it. If you're not careful, you get entangled in village politics, and it will hold you back. You can't waste time dealing with such controversies. Security issues is also something that we have learned. We started in some places. After a few years, we found ourselves in the middle of violent communal conflicts. If we had been more careful, maybe we would have selected another area. Then there are specific land and ownership issues. Rural Africans don't joke with land. It's very important for them. And there can be conflicts, there can be controversies. We have to understand it very well. So why do we focus on maternal health? Because that's the most vulnerable members of the community. The pregnant women, the women who are giving birth, and the newborns and the small children. This diagram shows some of sort of condense our healthcare model, but I will come to them as we go along. So here are the key components of the maternal health programs. 24-hour service, focus on having more delivery, more births in the hospital rather than at home, and comprehensive antenatal care, health education, family planning, local staff. That means it's a unique focus of or a unique part of our model, that we try to recruit as far as possible local people. By local people, I don't mean Nigerians or people from Ebony or even people from the local government, but people from that community to work in the health centers. We need skilled birth attendants, and of course we need a well-stocked or well-equipped health center. So the 24-hour care is very fundamental. Without 24-hour service in our hospital, you can achieve nothing in maternal health. And it's a huge problem in Nigeria and also in other places, that government staff, they arrive at work late and they leave early. And they, as you know, babies, they don't come during office hours. So when there is no one on duty in the health centers at night or on the weekends, you can't gain the confidence of the community. And so this means that you have to have enough staff for shifts. And if you want the staff to be on duty 24 hours, you must make them comfortable. That means they must have a place to stay, they must have some source of power, and they must have water. Otherwise, you will not be able to maintain 24 hours care. In Ebony State, last year, out of 171 rural health centers, only 15% had 24 hours care, and most of them were AMERT works. So facility delivery versus home delivery. It's not an easy thing. One would think that if you open a hospital, everyone will come there, but you cannot change a tradition or the way of living that has lasted for decades or centuries overnight. So it takes time. And so you have to be able to explain the advantages of facility delivery. The men has to be involved. Sometimes men oppose it because they think that they'll have to pay money, and they create this thing that a strong woman will deliver at home and only the weak ones will go to the hospital. There's traditional birth attendants in every village in rural Africa. There are women who help their sisters to give birth in the absence of access to proper healthcare. So it's good to see them as partners in this project, and sometimes you can recruit some of them, those who are trainable, because some of them are doing sort of superstitious, and they're not very trainable. Some of them are very old, like 80 years old, but if you can absorb them, a lot of wonderful, wonderful women are traditional birth attendants. And in Ghana and Burkina Faso, when I personally first started working with maternal health, we worked only with traditional birth attendants. And then in the beginning, you can give financial incentives like free delivery materials, and so on, to entice people, to get them used to coming to the health centers. And we've been very successful with that. In some areas, more than 90% of the deliveries are at the health center. So the comprehensive antenatal care, that means the checkup during pregnancy. And attendance required for incentives, what that means is that the free delivery in the early stages of the project can be available only to those who come to the health center for antenatal care. And you must have doctors present to take the obstetric history. You must have a laboratory. You must have the setup to do the 5-6 laboratory tests that are needed during pregnancy. We have ultrasound machine, which is also very important, at least once during pregnancy and more times on indication. They must have access to the basic routine drugs like folic acids and so on that can help to make a safer pregnancy. Immunization against tetanus and against preventive treatment for malaria is important during pregnancy. And so what this achieves is to identify those women who are at high risk of complications, so losing their lives or also to lose the lives of their babies. Our health education, we have to go into the villages and share the awareness, talk about the advantage of giving birth in the health centers. So we go to village meetings, we call our own village meetings, women's groups meetings, youth meetings, and raise this awareness. Family planning is very important. In a conference that was about 10-15 years ago in Nairobi, on maternal mortality, they said that if women had access to family planning, that's the biggest factor in reducing maternal mortality. So there are 3 stages. One is awareness. In the rural villages, there's just no awareness about what are the options or what are the choices for family planning. We've been to meetings where they just look at us and they didn't know anything about it. Then acceptance, which is the next step. And here the men also comes in. You know, in some parts of Africa, it's seen as, if you talk about family planning, like having less children, it's looked upon as against their culture and un-African, and it will be sometimes aggressively opposed. But through regular health education, also the men come around. A lot of the women get tired, you know, after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 babies, they are happy to take a break or so. So we also use the word child spacing very often. Yes, have many children, but space them, at least 2-3 years between child. So local staff, I mentioned it, it's a great advantage if you can get local people to staff the health centers. When the women come for checkups in the hospital, or when they come to delivery to give birth in the hospital, they meet someone who speaks their own dialect, who understands them. if you are with a health worker and look at the list of 50 pregnant women, these our local people not only know their names, and they also know their faces and where they live. And it facilitates this health education outreach and builds communication and builds community confidence. So it's one of the things that are a cornerstone, are also unique with our approach, because government likes to mix it up and post people here and there. It's almost like a carryover from the colonial times where they used transfers, to sort of keep control. And we also have a special program we can mention here, where young women and some young men also, who come and work as assistants in the health centers, they can qualify for scholarship, and then we send them to school to become nurses and community health workers for 3 years, and we pay all their expenses. So then we build capacity in healthcare in the local community, and we give opportunity for a career and an education to particularly to young women who otherwise have little choice but just to marry and continue farming or petty trading. We need midwives and skilled birth attendants that can manage complications and who can identify complications in time and make the referrals when necessary. A lot, as I said, a lot of the traditional birth attendants are wonderful women, and normal birth they can handle very, very well. But they are not equipped and they're not skilled, they're not knowledgeable about how to deal with complications that can turn deadly. As the project grew, we found that we were able to do more and more. And so in some of the health centers, we even have operating theaters. Of course, all the necessary drugs, uterotonics. Uterotonics is to make the uterus contract after birth. The highest cause of maternal death is postpartum hemorrhage from uterine atony, and there are certain drugs that needs to be available to help to combat postpartum hemorrhage, and then so many other things, other equipments and drugs and so on. Another unique aspect that we have is the maternal health promoters. We started this in Ghana. The women in the village elect a health promoter. That means a local woman who is respected among her sisters. And they get some training from us, and then they track every pregnancy in their village. And they organize support group meetings every month for all the pregnant women. So this becomes like a grassroots network for health education. In the election, no men is allowed. It's only the women who will select who it will be. And they work closely with the health workers in the health center. So here's a pregnant women support group meeting. A health worker from the health center, we have some visual materials that help them to give them education, answer questions, and it creates like a nice, particularly if they're the local health workers, a nice communication and confidence from the health center to the community. High risk home visit. If a woman is identified as high risk during the antenatal checkup, if you don't follow up, then it serves no purpose. So we have health workers who go and visit those that are identified as being at risk of some kind of complications, and during which will be found by the ultrasound or by the lab tests or by taking their obstetric history. That means those who had serious complications in previous pregnancies and births are at a high risk of having the same kind of complications again. Another thing we use to raise awareness is health rallies. So it's, nobody likes to listen to a lecture. Nobody. People hate lectures. So in Africa particularly, nobody likes in the village. Nobody likes lectures. So what we do is that we have these health rallies where we mix cultural displays with health talks. And we have like educational theaters, often put up by the maternal health promoters. And it's like a festive atmosphere. And everybody comes, old people, children, men, women, hundreds of people come. And we also give them opportunities there to display their local dances, their local traditions. Like you see on the photo here, you see the masquerades, which is a typical Nigerian thing on special occasions. Very elaborate masks, and children will shriek with terror and joy when they come. So that's been working very well for us, combining health education with cultural displays. And then it also has a chance for dialogue. People can ask questions or challenge what we're saying. Now, going to another aspect here, the health center management. I mean, in Africa, we can say that, like in here in Ebony State, we often put it like this, that the problem of healthcare in Nigeria is not that it's not like lack of hospitals or not lack of health workers. The problem is corruption. And that means that financial mismanagement. And so we found that by having the community play a leading role in the management of the health center is very important. So we create a community management committee or the clinic management committee elected by the communities, and we give them some training for 1 week. And so they make key financial decisions. They get all the reports every month on the finances and operation in the health centers, and they manage all the issues, the liaisons with the community. And they also lead constructions and upgrades, and they are the signatories in the health center bank account. Now, these are people from the different villages, so they can't really do the day-to-day management of the finances. So we select health workers in each health center that we train them on how to manage the daily finances. And so they maintain all the registers, all the computerized accounts, they pay the staff salaries, they send deposits to the bank, maintains the pharmacy inventory, laboratory inventory, tracks receivables and payables, and reports to the community. So as we get organized here, some of the key components of the management is community ownership. I mean, it's something different than government ownership. And in many of the hospitals or health centers around Nigeria and other places, we say, well, this is the government health center. Yes, the places are the government health centers. But if you feel like that, then they feel that if something goes wrong, the government should come and pay for and sort out the problems. Or let's say there's a leak in the roof, they're waiting for people to come from the capital city to repair it. But if the community take ownership, if they participated in the construction, they feel the ownership. And the terms of the difference of the relationship, the partnership must be very clear. So AMART has a memorandum of understanding with each community, and also a memorandum of understanding with the government, where the roles of AMART, the roles of government, and the roles of the community is clearly defined. One of the key points in our MOU, our memorandum of understanding, is that all money generated in the health center, it stays in the health center. It cannot be diverted to AMART, it cannot be taken by government, and even the community cannot decide to use it for something other than health. And so the AMERT, they give approval for all the major expenses I mean, we have a department that supervises this. And one of the key things here is, of course, to eliminate leakages. So we do monthly monitoring of the finances. We reconcile the bank accounts, cash accounts, check inventory records, look at the markups of all the income generating thing like the pharmacy, the lab, blood, cards, oxygen, etc. And we track spending versus the budget. So we try to eliminate all leakages. There's a bad culture in many countries in the world, not only Africa, but in Nigeria, you see it a lot, that there's sort of like a culture here where it's like okay to take some money out or to steal some out. They say like corruption is like you steal too much, but you can steal some. And this permeates the Nigerian society from the capital, from federal level down to village level. And so for us to demonstrate that it doesn't have to be like that is one of the most important things we do. So Amert's role is really to instill the service spirit in our team and amongst our partners and in the communities, and to have complete transparency in the finances. There's no secret at all. Accountability, everything has to be accounted for, and the report is available for others. So we're trying to create a new kind of culture, which is rivaling the very poor culture in the civil service. So this is some of our main role is that we want to be known for, or we want that the people know us, that we are not corruptible, that we have a strong moral stand. And so, as I called it somewhere, Jama Niyama Prachar. Jama Niyama means we are not so much out in the village teaching meditation and yoga postures, but we want to project a strong moral stand. This is very much needed, and maybe it's the more important than hospitals, more important than water in the village, more important than ambulances and so on. All right, and so the other aspects, coming back to the other aspect, the humanitarian one, our slogan is every life counts, that all the staff go the extra mile to save lives. And we try to ensure that no lives at all are lost from delays caused by lack of finance. You know, in maternal health and even in children health, most of the deaths are due to delays. And so we maintain a fund. Oh, yeah, we're coming back to that. So here are the aspects of that: the quality care, eliminate delays, ambulance services, support for hospital referrals. That means referrals to higher healthcare facilities or hospitals. And we pay for life-saving surgeries, we care for the disabled, and we provide emergency intervention, like, for example, in cholera outbreaks and so on. You see photo of 3 of our 8 ambulances. You see surgery going on in the health centers, and here we are at a cholera outbreak. So Amert Nigeria achievements, we have had 28,000 births, excluding twins and triplets. We are in the area on the planet with the highest number of twins and triplets. I have seen 14 triplets here and 1 quadruplet since we started, and uncountable twins. I mean, it's not even news here. Every week we have several twin births. We do 14,000, we have done 1,400 cesarean sections in our health centers. That means 4 of our health centers are upgraded to become referral centers. And the ambulances have done more than 3,000 runs. Some of the health centers have received up to 95% health center deliveries. We have opened 12 new health centers or small hospitals. 2 have been suspended by local war, but hopefully peace is about to return. We will resume working there. We have constructed 25 health center buildings. That means health center hospital buildings or staff quarters, together with the communities. that the communities have provided the labor. So we have 160 health workers, like nurses, employed in the health centers. We have done children's surgeries, more than 450 in the last years. This is from 2018. We have sent we have drilled boreholes in 230 villages. That means villages that didn't have access to safe water. And we have economic empowerment. We have a model of cooperatively managed revolving credit schemes. It's sort of like micro enterprise with a cooperative model that has helped 650 widows start their own business. So the self-reliance achievements is 51% of the health workers are paid by the health centers. That means the health center that has the highest percentage of health workers paid is 85, the lowest are at 21. So 100% of support staffs, I mean ambulance drivers, cashiers, security, health recorders, cleaners, etc., are paid by the health center income. Health centers and communities have contributed labor in construction. I've already said that. So guaranteeing the minimum requirements of life. I will conclude with some more quotes from Baba. The entire wealth of the universe is the common patrimony of all. So the minimum requirements of life should be made available to everybody. In other words, food, clothing, medical treatment, housing, and education must be provided to all. But dependency is a detriment to development. To quote Baba from Ananda Sutram, society has the responsibility to meet the minimum requirements of every individual. But if it arranges food and builds a house for everyone under the impetus of this responsibility, individual initiative is retarded. People will gradually become lethargic. So that is important to note. When theoreticians expound a theory, they do not study the world to ascertain its practical application. Blind to what is underneath their feet and with total disregard for reality, they build castles in the sky. It's so important to have feet on the ground and to do something practical, not to get lost in theory and lofty philosophies. You have to be with real people in the village, on the ground. Here's the ideal of our character, particularly those of you who are in responsible positions of leadership. I should never think no one is bothering to inquire whether I have eaten or not. Rather, you should always be concerned with others' necessities. You should always think more about your duties and responsibilities than your rights. The moralists of the world unite. Let's always look for partnerships and work with other people. So to summarize, here's the last slide. Our development goals, our long-term goals are 3. Sustainability. That means the project that we work on, the ability of the project to provide benefits after AMERT withdraws funding and moves on to new project areas. Moving on, the project is success when you can walk away from it and the project can stand on its own legs. They're sort of like children. And then overcome dependency. The goal is to strengthen local capacity and mechanism for self-reliance until it is free from financial dependency. So that's my presentation. I thank you very much. I hope you could hear me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dada.
Exactly on time.
Yes. Shall we have breakout rooms? Is there something we can discuss?
Yes, I would like to suggest that you discuss the balance between the right balance between humanitarian relief, saving lives, and long-term development goals like sustainability and so on. So if there can be a discussion about those two things. And
can you say that one more time so we can write it in the chat?
All right. I would like to see that the discussion should be, I know, as we do service, as we try to serve those with the greatest need, let's say, for example, in healthcare, how do we make the balance between the long-term sustainability goals, the development goals, and the emergency relief of saving lives in the moment? What's our, where do the balance lie, and where should we put our priorities? Yeah, and in our discussion, we talked a lot about community participation. That was like at the heart of the strategy, and so the discussion was more focused on community participation as a priority, towards creating something sustainable, something that can have continue to give benefit to the community over a long term. We actually spent less time to talk about relief or emergency.
Yeah. Would anyone like to tell from the other groups? Or you can put ideas in the chat and questions in the chat.
From the group I was with the French speaking, some points were brought up. First was a great appreciation of Dada's work. It's really impressive what Dada has come up to. All this point that he brought up. I remember more than 20, 25, 27 years ago, I was in the course of UNDP, and Dada has improved on the method of the UNDP. So it is really fantastic. But one point which was put on this exactly, it is the point of ethics that Dada put as the key element, and the involvement of the community. And even the most difficult point, which is how to train the people to manage the finances. So those points were very much strong in, at least until where I listened. It is very, very inspiring to see Dada doing such a fantastic work in Africa. Very, very inspiring.
There's a question from Japa. In the chat, he says, Dada, are you familiar with the concept of positive deviance and if it has impacted your work?
I didn't quite get it. Huh? What?
Positive deviance. It's in the chat.
Okay, I am afraid I'm not familiar with that particular term, so I'll be interested
Japa,
to hear.
You want to explain
it?
Yes, it has been. I'm curious because I know it has been used in the case of working in countries where malnutrition is an issue, but in this particular health issue of maternal health, I wonder if it could be as effective. But what positive deviance does, people go into an area and they try to find people who maybe have better outcomes than others and find out what they're doing differently. What's the positive deviance that they're doing, and which sometimes are things that maybe some of the society may not consider taboo in some cases. But when they start educating, so the idea that the solution is coming from that community by identifying the positive deviant behavior that is impacting the issue. And in malnutrition cases, it's happened quite a lot that they can go in and find that some people are consistently healthier than others, and if they're doing something different than the mainstream, and then they educate the whole society, they take on those habits, and they then sort of solve their own problems to a certain degree. And so I just wondered if Dada was familiar with that, whether or not there are situations in maternal health where that might unfold in some way.
Yes, that's a very nice point and very strong point. We in our work with malnutrition, we do something like that, and the local people participate in that. We go to villages and we demonstrate, and it's the local people from that community who demonstrates it. The use of locally available food items in order to create a more balanced diet, and particularly about protein, because the main issue for child malnutrition is protein deficiency. They feed the children just cassava and yam, which is just starch, while they can have access to pulses, beans, and leafy greens and so on that will enable them to get a more balanced diet and better protein. But it's an interesting term which I can't remember coming across it. So I will definitely keep that in mind, and I thank you for bringing it to my attention. Positive deviance. Thank you.
Dada, I have a question.
Yes.
I live in Switzerland, and I had a home birth, and my midwife, actually there were two, and they were both midwife trained in Switzerland, but they went to Africa to work there, where they gained lots of experience, and then when they came back to Switzerland, they could become a home birth midwives. Do you have some kind of scheme like this in your clinics? Where the people, pardon me? So do you have some kind of program where people from Europe or America could come to gain more experience in assisting birth, helping women in conditions that were more like home type of conditions?
Yes, when I worked in Ghana and to some extent in Burkina Faso, particularly in Ghana, we had many midwives come from Spain, from US, particularly also from the UK, who worked with us and stayed at the Amert Health Center for weeks or sometimes for months. Nigeria, we haven't had much like that. We've had a couple of visitors. The reason is this, that in Nigeria, the visa situation is very much different. And to come to Nigeria as a volunteer, you need to apply for a temporary work permit. And it's a complicated and expensive process that combines applying in Nigeria and also applying overseas. While in Ghana, you could just come as a tourist and extend your visa for months without the complications. So I will say that midwives are welcome to come, but for staying for a longer period of time, it is not so easy here. But to come for 2 to 4 weeks should not be any difficulty. But then they shouldn't write that they're coming to volunteer as a midwife. They should say that they're coming to visit or like a tourist, but they can come. Then of course we have the situation which is it's like no tourist in Nigeria. it's like a joke. You apply for Nigeria visa and say that you're a tourist, and they will deny you the visa. They will say no tourists come to Nigeria because there are real security issues here. They're like people are afraid, you know, of violence and instability or so on. But we'll be happy to receive midwives to come for a short period of time.
Got
Thank
another
you.
question from Mayadish. If you find out that your committed people are corrupt, what do you do?
Well, that's of course something that we're dealing with. I mean, corrupt is a strong word, but we try to be very strict about it. That if we find like a financial mismanagement or financial leaks, we try to do tight monitoring at all times, so that when we find such things, then we crack down on it. People can be dismissed and replaced. I mean, this has happened. And let's say if they are, some of them are very valuable in other aspects, and their shall we say, their financial mismanagement is not so major, you know, then there can be warnings. But basically, one of the key things is that there is very up and front a clear position that we don't accept any kind of corruption, and we don't.
I hate to interrupt, but my question was more about not about the employees, but when you're initially developing stakeholders in the community, right? You're having community meetings and people step forward, right?
Yeah.
Before you're starting the clinic, I imagine you have corrupt people in that process trying to take advantage.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, then we are hoping that, you know, through years of experience here, that we develop a sort of a sense of who is sincere, and you know, who are the people who are ready to go the extra miles and sacrifice for their own communities. And everywhere we have gone, such people are not many, but you know, as in the quote I said, you know, you cannot hope that all the sheep will go with you, but initially, but if you find 1 or 2 or 3 people in each new project area that are genuine, that have really the interest of the community at heart, that are ready to sacrifice, then the power of their example will be enough to sort of carry the community along. But and if we find that someone is corrupt or not reliable, then we don't work with them. They'll be on the outside looking in.
Thank you.
The question I have,
Yeah.
Word opened 12 clinics in Ebonyi province, is that right?
Yeah, Ebony State.
And 2 were closed due to civil war?
Yeah, violent communal conflicts, yeah.
So what are your plans for the future?
You
What's
mean
your future vision?
Okay, our future vision, that's a good point. Our future vision is to withdraw from the 10 that we are working with by the end of 2025. Just yesterday, you see, I have a short beard today. Yesterday, I had a meeting we've been working on for a long time with the governor. You know, we have an MOU with the governor. And we are now on our 3rd governor since we came here. The first one was fantastic. He abided to the terms of the MOU. And for 8 years, we had someone who totally neglected the health sector. So now recently, in the last couple of months, we have a new governor. And we are trying to get the government to abide by the terms of the MOU. And we had a very successful meeting yesterday. And so we are hoping, through strengthening the health facilities on the grassroots level, you know, through good financial management, that the health centers can pay more and more of their staff by themselves. That means they don't need the subsidies of AMERT every month. And at the same time, that the government follows through according to the MOU, where they will also absorb a significant number of health workers in the project. And so our plan is to, or we have started the plan already last year, that by the end of February, end of 2025, we will have withdrawn all the subsidies, we can say. There will no longer be a financial dependency on AMERT in these existing health centers. And at the same time, we will, taking the lessons we learned, we will take our model to other communities in remote rural areas where there is still no access to quality healthcare. We have so many applications from communities asking us to come. And so we may even start that this year to go to more communities, as we have already started to reduce the subsidies and reduce the dependency for the other health centers.
A question from Mira: in what percentage women are present in AMERT clinics leadership?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is not enough. I mean, we had in terms of the doctors, we've had like a year ago, we had 3 women doctors, which are like leaders on the ground in the villages, but they have all moved on to the UK or through better career opportunities. So now we don't have any women doctors.
How many male doctors do you have?
Right now, as of today, we have 10, but we are in the process of, we are recruiting one more very soon. We have a problem of holding the doctors, because Nigerian educated people, particularly the doctors, they try their best to go to Europe, mostly to the UK or to the US. Or a lot of them go to Saudi Arabia also. But we have in our office administration, we have 3 women. Okay, you ask a percentage. It is in the administration, it is less than 50% of women. In the health centers, the staff in the health center is almost 90% women. Midwives and nurses are more women. And all the midwives, I mean, we don't have male midwives here. In Burkina Faso, they have male midwives, but here we don't have. So it's a weakness at this point. We need to have more women. But we have, in the leadership, we have like all the, shall we say, management meetings. We have the head of health education, the head of economic empowerment, and the ones in charge of special needs. We have over 8 lab scientists, 4 of them, I mean, half of them are women. But it's a weak point now. We don't have enough women. But we are looking to, we have lost some of the key women who worked with us. Yeah.
And again,
I would like to just know, what about these village leaders? Are they always men?
No.
That you work with inside the clinics?
No, I mean, traditionally, the traditional leaders we are in Igbo land, the tribe that dominates this part of Nigeria, which used to be called Biafra. Some of you, if you are old enough, you can remember the Biafra War from 1967 to 1970, seeking independence for the Igbo people from the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which was crushed with the help of the UK and so on. But so in their tradition, they have traditional leaders that are elected. That means there's no dynasty. It's not from father to son. But all those leaders are all males. But AMERT and other NGOs has made it a condition for interventions in communities that they must include women in their cabinet. And as mostly those traditional leaders have their meetings, at the same time, also the women's organizations, the women's associations have meetings, and they are powerful. And as of right now, the chairperson of the management committee in 3 of the health centers, the chairperson is a woman, and there are women members in all those management committees. And the financial management of the health centers are almost exclusively done by women.
From Paramashiva, do you give more preference to Margis when recruiting, or do you take competence into account?
No, here we don't have so many Margis. I mean, some of the staff have learned meditation and are Margis, but while recruiting, we basically recruit medical professionals, I mean, doctors, midwives, lab scientists, or health educators. And that goes to the public. And I don't really, maybe only in 1 or 2 cases, we have full-time staff that are Margis before they join the organization here. So we don't have many Margis that are being recruited.
I put in the chat an evaluation form for this class. Please fill it out. And also the link for the YouTube. All the classes are being recorded, and they're available in all languages at the Amandla African Samaj YouTube channel.
I put a question there in the chat. And what
Can you tell, please, Dara?
Yes, I'll do that. What can you say about your experience working in Africa? I remember you wanted very much to do direct social work, and you went to Africa. How to replicate the work you do in Nigeria to other places on the continent? I think what you're doing is a model. So your experience and how to replicate.
Well, I am so grateful to have the chance to have had the chance to work in Africa. I am just last year, as I was looking at my life, I just realized that I have 23 years in Africa, while I left Norway when I was 18. So on the basis of that, I am more of an African than a Norwegian right now. But I even in the 80s, I worked in Haiti and Dominican Republic, and Haiti in particular is like more Africa than Africa, you know, in some ways. So I feel very comfortable here. I never feel self-conscious, even though I can go months without seeing a white person. But so I feel very happy. And what moves me the most is maybe that what you can learn from real people in the villages, you know, and you know, we are the experience working in the health projects, you know, you become very close to birth and death. You become very close to you know, which are like fundamental part of the human experience, and it's been wonderful. So I feel very comfortable in Africa. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. There's nothing else I'd rather do. I feel completely fulfilled, you know, in terms of joining Ananda Marga and being a whole timer. You know, this is to have these kind of opportunities. Exactly, there's nothing I want to do more than that. So people shouldn't be afraid of Africa. You know, people think they will be eaten by lions or snakes or trampled by elephants, or they will get Ebola
Or malaria.
or well, malaria you might get, but you know, there's a lot of fears about Africa. Which, I mean, the most dangerous thing in Africa is to be in a car on the big roads. Other than that, Africa is a wonderful place. The people are even Nigeria, you know, it is like bad reputation. There are millions and millions and millions of wonderful, nice, honest, intelligent, sweet Nigerians, you know, and I'm sure that's the case in all throughout the continent. So yeah, I love Africa. I'm very happy. If my health holds up, I'll be happy to be here for the rest of my days.
Aydish asked if you'll write a book or teach a course so we can learn about your process.
You know, I find it very difficult to write an article for 1 or 2 pages. I always said I don't expect to be able to write a book, but I can. I'm happy to share our experiences. I wanted to make, you know, this presentation, even though of course we're going at breakneck speed and trying to cover, you know, wide areas. I wanted to make it very practical about maternal health, because I mean, at this point, I feel I know more about maternal health than about yoga, for example. I mean, because that's been filling my life for even since Burkina Faso. And I feel that you know, if anyone in the mission are interested in to work in that area, primary healthcare, and particularly the focus in rural developing countries is always going to come back to maternal and newborn health. You know, I'll be happy to share the experiences, and it might be helpful for anyone in any developing country who wants to work in that field. But I can't promise you that I will write a book. I can't see it.
You should dictate a book, Dada.
Okay, well, I'm flattered that you want to get a book from me, but I can't promise. I'm like happy to talk and communicate, but at this point, I can't commit to write a book.
And what about the possibility of replicating your experience in other parts of the continent? Because
Yes.
what you're dealing with in Nigeria or in Ghana and Burkina Faso is an issue all over the continent, actually.
I think so.
How you see that happening?
No, I mean, these kind of projects, it's sort of all-consuming. You know, one has to. I think it's like this in anything you do in life. You know, if you want to be successful, you have to sort of commit yourself to it very, very strongly and focus on it. There's only a few people who can do many things at the same time. I know there are some people who can do this, but I find it difficult to do many things at the same time. So if there are other people in Congo or other countries who want to work in primary healthcare in the rural areas, or specifically in maternal and newborn health, I think that a lot of the sort of key components of our approach of working in the community, or what are the effective components of a successful maternal health program, I'm sure that a lot of the things that we do will be helpful. Aside from, you know, the basic, shall we say, the principles of development programs. That means looking to the long-term sustainability, yes, the long-term benefits to the community. You know, these projects are sort of like children. Like you have a child, you take care of it completely. After a while, they can walk by themselves, and they grow up, and they can do more things by themselves. And finally, they go off on their own, and you don't have to look after them every single day again. So the project is like that. It's like a natural thing in life, and it has maybe been a defect in some aspects, or in our thinking sometimes in the mission, that we want to have ownership, and we want to maintain control, or we want to own it. We want to put our name on it forever. And I don't think that's healthy. Like the water project in Ghana and the clinic we started in Ghana, I left there in 2010, 13 and a half years ago, and they're both still running by the community and government. So the success of this project is that when you can walk away from it, when it's like a child that can stand on its own legs and do their own thing. And I think that's the right kind of thinking. Like when Baba expanded sort of formally AMERT scope from just disaster response to development projects in 1985, and the first global project started in Ghana and Burkina Faso. I think that that's when Dada Vishwarupananda also was posted in AMERT. I think that it's a significant, a very significant moment, and I think that letting us be guided by some of these, shall we say, proud principles that I quoted in the quotes of Baba that I featured in the PowerPoint, I think that's the right way to go. It's no longer just relief work. We are trying to think long term. We're trying to think in a progressive way. We're trying to be very careful not to create dependencies. We want to help projects to stand on their own leg. I think that these principles, can help in all kinds of AMERT projects in Africa, and probably the similar situation will be there in Africa or parts of Central and South America also.
That's fantastic. One last question I just put: how do you measure the success of a project? Is it about financial sustainability, or also ethical leadership sustainability, or how you measure that success?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's all those things. When you are looking at reach, are you reaching a lot of people? That's why I mentioned, as you select a project, you should have an idea about your catchment area. What's the population? If you're going to invest time, money, human resources, you don't want to invest a lot and you're only going to reach a population of 1,000. If you can invest the same thing and you reach a population of 10,000 or 20,000, better to try to reach more. So the reach is an important. And then it is the statistics of shall we say, lives saved, reduction of maternal mortality. I mean, a key thing in maternal health is the ratio of facility births versus home births with the traditional birth attendants. Some places we start with 5% delivering in hospital, and then we have raised it in some places as high as 95% of the babies born in hospital.
Oh.
It's an interesting thing. That's actually why we started the maternal health promoters, because in the early years we were like congratulating ourselves. Okay, this month in this clinic we had 30 deliveries, very good. But we didn't know if that was 30 out of 40 or 30 out of 50 or 30 out of 100. So we needed to find means of tracking the pregnancy outcome, the birth outcomes in the villages. And this is one of the reasons why we started the maternal health promoter program. And I tell you, government has no idea. If government statistics like Nigerian government or Ebony State government tells you that we have this and this percentage of facility deliveries, they have no idea what they're talking about, because nobody has any means of really documenting the number of home births in the interior and the rural villages in Africa. So that's the key point for the outcome of
a project
of the maternal health program. And I also right now we are very focused, and is focused on increasing the economic self-reliance. So as we are until the beginning of last year, I think maybe we started in February or so, or March last year, I can't remember. the health centers only paid auxiliary workers. That means like cleaners and all that. But now we have more than we have 60 something, between 60 and 70 of the health workers, nurses are paid by the income of the health centers. And that's made possible by reducing leakages, increasing the income, strengthening financial management, and so on. And also, I mean, the construction that when the health center expands and it needs another wing, more rooms, better delivery rooms or operating theaters and so on, that the health center saves money to do that construction. AMART can also help, but significantly the money for doing that, and including all the labor, comes from the community and also comes from the savings of the hospitals. And this is actually very unique. If you go around government health centers, none of the government health centers has any savings. None of them pay a single staff. None of them have enough human resources. Very few of them are maintaining 24-hour service. And this is one of my main experiences here, which I realized already from Burkina and Ghana, is that if your goal is maternal health, safe motherhood, nothing can be achieved without 24-hour service. Babies come at midnight, they come on Sundays, they come on holidays, and as it is in many parts of rural Nigeria, maybe most parts of rural Nigeria, you go there and you'll meet the padlocked door in the health center because the government doesn't want to spend money on human resource and staffing of the health centers. And you're not going to see an improvement in the indicators for maternal health if you don't do that. I mean, in Nigeria, some states do better than other states. But I mean, this is some of the key lessons we have here. So we are working very sort of directly on what it takes to meet our goals in maternal health. I mean, we're mostly talking about that. And then we talk very, very much about this sustainability, creating self-reliance, strengthening healthcare on the facility level. In Nigeria, there was recently a government new policy which gave something like 2% of the whole national petroleum income to what they call the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which is supposed to give free healthcare across the country, and to under fives, pregnant women, the elderly, the very poor, and it created the kind of attitude or psychology where every health center gets money from Abuja, that means the capital of Nigeria, on a monthly basis. And it's so anti-development and it's so harmful. So we are loudly proclaiming, even though it's good that the government wants to spend more on health, but it's not good to increase the dependency. It is not good to discourage them to learn how to stand on their own legs.
Yes.
So this is a key contribution that we are making here, and we are advocating it amongst other NGOs. Like there's like about 15 NGOs funded by USAID here, even here in Abakaliki, and also to the government. And the people are listening, and people are amazed to see what we have achieved in terms of strengthening health center at the facility, healthcare on the facility level, and strengthening them financially, removing leakages, creating savings, enabling them to pay their own staff. It's getting a lot of attention.
And in terms of leadership, aren't you afraid that after you go out, the corruption will come back? What system you set up to guarantee that the social responsibility, local responsibility in the community will be always a watchdog to the financial management of the clinic?
Yeah. That's a very good question. I can't I can't say for sure, how the future will be. But what we are trying to create is that to make people understand that the level that we reached in the standard, the level of self-reliance, the strength of the health center is due to these principles. That means transparency, accountability, strict monitoring. That means very strong financial management and rejecting the kind of culture which is predominant in the civil service, where everybody feels entitled to put money in their own pocket or divert resources to their own family or their own village and so on. So that is how it is. That's the best hope, that they can recognize this, and so then we put like systems in place, and if we can get them, I think we will, even though if we withdraw financially subsidies, we will still continue some level of monitoring.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that what you are making is special, is really fantastic. The level of decentralization, the sense of responsibility and ethical development. But as long as you don't have a submerged movement with proper decentralization, there will be no authority to oversee whatever is going on. So yes, a level of information to those clinics still having some theoretical link, not theoretical links, this level of that that they are going well, they know that you can come in to see. I think that is fantastic, yes. Thanks a lot, Dadaji. Thanks a lot. It's really fantastic.
Nada, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
All right, time is over now, I think. Thank you
Yes.
very, very much.
Okay, thank you to everybody who is there, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share our
I think you really should dictate a book about and just sell it in Nigeria.
Yes, and Guruvati wrote, you can record your experience and someone will write your biography. So you can be writing, speaking just like you're doing now, some other moments. Then some writers can, put this together, because this is a unique experience, Dada. As you yourself said, the USAID, the UNDP experience, they have not reached this level of analysis you've come to. So I know you're humble, but it's really a breakthrough.
All right, and thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.